This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Corey Samuel. The Consolation of Philosophy by Anicius Manlius Severinus Boethius. Translated by H.R. James. Book 2. The Vanity of Fortune's Gifts. Section 3 and Song 3. All passes. If fortune should plead thus against thee, assuredly thou wouldst not have one word to offer in reply. Or, if thou canst find any justification of thy complainings, thou must show what it is. I will give thee space to speak. Then said I, Verily, thy pleas are plausible, yea, steeped in the honeyed sweetness of music and rhetoric. But their charm lasts only while they are sounding in the ear. The sense of his misfortunes lies deeper in the heart of the wretched. So, when the sound ceases to vibrate upon the air, the heart's indwelling sorrow is felt with renewed bitterness. Then said she, It is indeed as thou sayest, for we have not yet come to the curing of thy sickness. As yet, these are but lenitives conducing to the treatment of a malady hitherto obstinate. The remedies which go deep I will apply in due season. Nevertheless, to deprecate thy determination to be thought wretched, I ask thee, hast thou forgotten the extent and bounds of thy felicity? I say nothing of how, when orphaned and desolate, thou wast taken into the care of illustrious men, how thou wast chosen for alliance with the highest in the state, and even before thou wert bound to their house by marriage, wert already dear to their love, which is the most precious of all ties. Did not all pronounce thee most happy in the virtues of thy wife, the splendid honours of her father, and the blessing of male issue? I pass over, for I care not to speak of blessings in which others also have shared, the distinctions often denied to age, which thou enjoyedst in thy youth. I choose rather to come to the unparalleled culmination of thy good fortune. If the fruition of any earthly success has weight in the scale of happiness, can the memory of that splendour be swept away by any rising flood of troubles? That day when thou didst see thy 2 sons ride forth from home joint consuls, followed by a train of senators, and welcomed by the good will of the people; when these 2 sat in curule chairs in the senate house, and thou, by thy panegyric on the king, didst earn the fame of eloquence and ability; when in the circus, seated between the 2 consuls, thou didst glut the multitude thronging around with the triumphal largesses for which they looked, methinks thou didst cozen fortune while she caressed thee and made thee her darling. Thou didst bear off a boon which she had never before granted to any private person. Art thou, then, minded to cast up a reckoning with fortune? Now, for the first time, she has turned a jealous glance upon thee. If thou compare the extent and bounds of thy blessings and misfortunes, thou canst not deny that thou art still fortunate. Or if thou esteem not thyself favoured by fortune, in that thy then seeming prosperity hath departed, deem not thyself wretched, since what thou now believest to be calamitous passeth also. What! Art thou but now come suddenly and a stranger to the scene of this life? Thinkest thou there is any stability in human affairs, when man himself vanishes away in the swift course of time? It is true that there is little trust that the gifts of chance will abide, yet the last day of life is in a manner the death of all remaining fortune. What difference then, thinkest thou, is there, whether thou leavest her by dying, or she leave thee by fleeing away? Song 3. All passes. When, in rosy chariot drawn, Phoebus skins to light the dawn, by his flaming beams assailed, every glimmering star is paled. When the grove, by zephyrs fed, with rose blossom blushes red, doth rude Auster breathe thereon, bare it stands, its glory gone. Smooth and tranquil lies the deep, while the winds are hushed in sleep. Soon, when angry tempests lash, wild and high the billows dash. Thus, if nature's changing face holds not still a moment's space, fleeting deem man's fortunes, deem bliss as transient as a dream. One law only standeth fast: things created may not last. End of Book 2. The Vanity of Fortune's Gifts. Section 3 and Song 3. All passes.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Kirsten Ferreri, Los Angeles, California, July 2006. The Consolation of Philosophy, by Anicius, Manlius, Severinus, Boethius. Translated by H.R. James. Book 2. The Vanity of Fortune. Section 4 and Song 4. The Golden Mean. Then said I, True are thine admonishings, thou nurse of all excellence, nor can I deny the wonder of my fortune's swift career. Yet it is this which chafes me the more cruelly in the recalling, for truly in adverse fortune the worst sting of misery is to have been happy. Well, said she, if thou art paying the penalty of mistaken belief, thou canst not rightly impute the fault to circumstances. If it is the felicity which fortune gives that moves thee, mere name though it be, come, reckon up with me how rich thou art in the number and weightiness of thy blessings. Then if, by the blessing of Providence, thou hast still preserved unto thee safe and inviolate that which, howsoever thou mightest reckon thy fortune, thou wouldst have thought thy most precious possession, what right hast thou to talk of ill fortune whilst keeping all fortune's better gifts? Yet Symmachus, thy wife's father, a man whose splendid character does honour to the human race, is safe and unharmed, and while he bewails thy wrongs, this rare nature, in whom wisdom and virtue are so nobly blended, is himself out of danger, a boon thou wouldst have been quick to purchase at the price of life itself. Thy wife yet lives, with her gentle disposition, her peerless modesty and virtue. This the epitome of all her graces, that she is the true daughter of her sire. She lives, I say, and for thy sake only preserves the breath of life, though she loathes it, and pines away in grief and tears for thy absence, wherein, if in naught else, I would allow some marring of thy felicity. What shall I say of thy sons, and their consular dignity? How in them, so far as may be in youths of their age, the example of their fathers' and grandfathers' character shines out. Since, then, the chief care of mortal man is to preserve his life, how happy thou art, couldst thou but recognize thy blessings, who possessest even now what no one doubts to be dearer than life. Wherefore now dry thy tears. Fortune's hate hath not involved all thy dear ones. The stress of the storm that has assailed thee is not beyond measure intolerable, since there are anchors still holding firm, which suffer thee not to lack either consolation in the present or hope for the future. I pray that they may still hold, for while they still remain, however things may go, I shall ride out the storm. Yet thou seest how much is shorn of the splendour of my fortunes. We are gaining a little ground, said she, if there is something in thy lot wherewith thou art not yet altogether discontented. But I cannot stomach thy daintiness when thou complainest with such violence of grief and anxiety, because thy happiness falls short of completeness. Why, who enjoys such settled felicity as not to have some quarrel with the circumstances of his lot? A troublous matter are the conditions of human bliss: either they are never realized in full, or never stay permanently. One has abundant riches, but is shamed by his ignoble birth. Another is conspicuous for his nobility, but through the embarrassment of poverty would prefer to be obscure. A third, richly endowed with both, laments the loneliness of an unwedded life. Another, though happily married, is doomed to childlessness, and nurses his wealth for a stranger to inherit. Yet another, blessed with children, mournfully bewails the misdeeds of son or daughter. Wherefore it is not easy for any one to be at perfect peace with the circumstances of his lot. There lurks in each several portions something which they who experience it know not nothing of, but which makes the sufferer wince. Besides, the more favoured a man is by fortune, the more fastidiously sensitive is he, and unless all things answer to his whim, he is overwhelmed by the most trifling misfortunes, because utterly unschooled in adversity. So petty are the trifles which rob the most fortunate of perfect happiness. How many are there, dost thou imagine, who would think themselves nigh heaven, if but a small portion from the wreck of thy fortune should fall to them? This very place which thou callest exile is to them that dwell therein their native land. So true is it that nothing is wretched, but thinking makes it so, and conversely, every lot is happy if borne with equanimity. Who is so blessed by fortune as not to wish to change his state, if once he gives rein to a rebellious spirit? With how many bitternesses is the sweetness of human felicity blent! And yet, if even that sweetness seem to him to bring delight in the enjoying, yet he cannot keep it from departing when it will. How manifestly wretched, then, is the bliss of earthly fortune, which lasts not for ever with those whose temper is equable, and can give no perfect satisfaction to the anxious-minded. Why then, ye children of morality, seek ye from without that happiness whose seat is only within us? Error and ignorance bewilder you. I will show thee in brief the hinge on which perfect happiness turns. Is there anything more precious to thee than thyself? Nothing, thou wilt say. If then thou art master of thyself, thou wilt possess that which thou wilt never be willing to lose, and which fortune cannot take from thee. And that thou mayest see that happiness cannot possibly consist in these things which are the sport of chance, reflect that, if happiness is the highest good of a creature living in accordance with reason, and if a thing which can in any wise be reft away is not the highest good, since that which cannot be taken away is better than it, it is plain that fortune cannot aspire to bestow happiness by reason of its instability. And besides, a man borne along by this transitory felicity must either know or not know its instability. If he knows not, how poor is a happiness which depends on the blindness of ignorance! If he knows it, he must needs fear to lose a happiness whose loss he believes to be possible. Wherefore a never-ceasing fear suffers him not to be happy. Or does he count the possibility of this loss a trifling matter? Insignificant, then, must be the good whose loss can be borne so equably. And further, I know thee to be one settled in the belief that the souls of men certainly die not with them, and convinced thereof by numerous proofs. It is clear also that the felicity which fortune bestows is brought to an end with the death of the body. Therefore it cannot be doubted but that, if happiness is conferred in this way, the whole human race sinks into misery when death brings the close of all. But if we know that many have sought the joy of happiness, not through death only, but also through pain and suffering, how can life make men happy by its presence when it makes them not wretched by its loss? Song 4. The Golden Mean. Who found it firm and sure would ever live secure, in spite of storm and blast, immovable and fast. Whoso would fain deride the ocean's threatening tide, his dwelling should not seek on sands or mountain peak. Upon the mountain's height the storm winds wreak their spite, the shifting sands disdain their burden to sustain. Do thou these perils flee, fair though the prospect be, and fix thy resting place on some low rock's sure base. Then, though the tempests roar, seas thunder on the shore, thou, in thy stronghold blest, and undisturbed shall rest, live all thy days serene, and mock the heavens' spleen. End of Book 2. The Vanity of Fortune, Section 4, and Song 4, The Golden Mean.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information and to find out how you can volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by David Barnes, London, May 2006. The Consolation of Philosophy by Anicius, Manlius, Severinus, Boethius. Translated by H.R. James. Book 2. The Vanity of Fortune's Gifts. Section 5 and Song 5, The Former Age. Section 5. But since my reasonings begin to work a soothing effect within thy mind, methinks I may resort to remedies somewhat stronger. Come, suppose now the gifts of fortune were not fleeting and transitory, what is there in them capable of ever becoming truly thine, or which does not lose value when looked at steadily and fairly weighed in the balance? Are riches, I pray thee, precious either through thy nature or in their own? What are they but mere gold and heaps of money? Yet these fine things show their quality better in the spending than in the hoarding. For I suppose 'tis plain that greed always makes men hateful, while liberality brings fame. But that which is transferred to another cannot remain in one's own possession, and if that be so, then money is only precious when it is given away, and by being transferred to others ceases to be one's own. Again, if all the money in the world were heaped up in one man's possession, all others would be made poor. Sound fills the ears of many at the same time without being broken into parts, but your riches cannot pass to many without being lessened in the process. And when this happens, they must needs impoverish those whom they leave. How poor and cramped a thing then is riches, which more than one cannot possess as an unbroken whole, which falls not to any one man's lot without the impoverishment of every one else? Or is it the glitter of gems that allures the eye? Yet how rarely excellent soever may be their splendour, remember the flashing light is in the jewels, not in the man. Indeed, I greatly marvel at men's admiration of them. For what can rightly seem beautiful to a being endowed with life and reason, if it lack the movement and structure of life? And although such things do in the end take on them more beauty from their Maker's care and their own brilliancy, still they in no wise merit your admiration, since their excellence is set at a lower grade than your own. Does the beauty of the fields delight you? Surely yes, it is a beautiful part of a right beautiful whole. Fitly indeed do we at times enjoy the serene calm of the sea, admire the sky, the stars, the moon, the sun. Yet is any of these thy concern? Dost thou venture to boast thyself of the beauty of any one of them? Art thou decked with spring's flowers? Is it thy fertility that swelleth in the fruits of autumn? Why art thou moved with empty transports? Why embracest thou an alien excellence as thine own? Never will fortune make thine that which the nature of things has excluded from thy ownership. Doubtless the fruits of the earth are given for the sustenance of living creatures, but if thou art content to supply thy wants so far as suffices nature, there is no need to resort to fortune's bounty. Nature is content with few things, and with a very little of these. If thou art minded to force superfluities upon her when she is satisfied, that which thou addest will prove either unpleasant or harmful. But now thou thinkest it fine to shine in raiment of diverse colours, yet, if indeed there is any pleasure in the sight of such things, it is the texture or the artist's skill which I shall admire. Or perhaps it is a long train of servants that makes thee happy. Why, if they behave viciously, they are a ruinous burden to thy house, and exceeding dangerous to their own master. While if they are honest, how canst thou count other men's virtue in the sum of thy possessions? From all which 'tis plainly proved that not one of these things which thou reckonest in the number of thy possessions is really thine. And if there is in them no beauty to be desired, why shouldst thou either grieve for their loss, or find joy in their continued possession? While if they are beautiful in their own nature, what is that to thee? They would have been not less pleasing in themselves, though never included among thy possessions. For they derive not their preciousness from being counted in thy riches, but rather thou hast chosen to count them in thy riches because they seemed to thee precious. Then what seek ye by all this noisy outcry about fortune? To chase away poverty, I ween, by means of abundance, and yet ye find the result just contrary. Why, this varied array of precious furniture needs more accessories for its protection. It is a true saying that they want most who possess most, and conversely, they want very little who measure their abundance by nature's requirements, not by the superfluity of vain display. Have ye no good of your own implanted within you, that ye seek your good in things external and separate? Is the nature of things so reversed that a creature divine by right of reason can in no other way be splendid in his own eyes, save by the possession of lifeless chattels? Yet, while other things are content with their own, ye, who in your intellect are godlike, seek from the lowest of things adornment for a nature of supreme excellence, and perceive not how great a wrong ye do your Maker. His will was that mankind should excel all things on earth. Ye thrust down your worth beneath the lowest of things. For if that in which each thing finds its good is plainly more precious than that whose good it is, by your own estimation ye put yourselves below the vilest of things, when ye deem these vile things to be your good. Nor does this fall out undeservedly. Indeed, man is so constituted that he then only excels other things when he knows himself. But he is brought lower than the beasts if he lose this self-knowledge. For that other creatures should be ignorant of themselves is natural. In man it shows as a defect. How extravagant, then, is this error of yours, in thinking that anything can be embellished by adornments not its own. It cannot be. For if such accessories add any lustre, it is the accessories that gain the praise, while that which they veil and cover remains in its pristine ugliness. And again I say, that is no good which injures its possessor. Is this untrue? No, quite true, thou sayest, and yet riches have often hurt those that possessed them, since the worst of men, who are all the more covetous by reason of their wickedness, think none but themselves worthy to possess all the gold and gems the world contains. So thou, who now dreadest pike and sword, mightest have trolled a carol in the robber's face, hadst thou entered the road of life with empty pockets. O wondrous blessedness of perishable wealth, whose acquisition robs thee of security. Song 5. The Former Age. Too blessed the former age, their life who in the fields contented led, and still by luxury unspoiled, on frugal acorns sparely fed. No skill was theirs the luscious grape with honey's sweetness to confuse, nor China's soft and sheeny silks tempurple with brave Tyrian hues. The grass their wholesome couch, their drink the stream, their roof the pine's tall shade, not theirs to cleave the deep, nor seek in strange far lands the spoils of trade. The trump of war was heard not yet, nor soiled the fields by bloodshed's stain, For why should war's fierce madness arm, when strife brought wound, but brought not gain? Ah, would our hearts might still return to following in those ancient ways! Alas, the greed of getting glows more fierce than Etna's fiery blaze. Woe, woe for him whoe'er it was, who first gold's hidden store revealed, and perilous treasure trove dug out, the gems that fain would be concealed. End of Book 2, The Vanity of Fortune's Gifts, Section 5, and Song 5, The Former Age.
Consolation of Philosophy by Boethius, translated by H.R. James. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, visit LibriVox.org. The Consolation of Philosophy, Book 2, Section 6 and Song 6, Nero's Infamy. What now shall I say of rank and power, whereby, because ye know not true power and dignity, ye hope to reach the sky? Yet, when rank and power have fallen to the worst of men, did ever an Etna, belching forth flame and fiery deluge, work such mischief? Verily, as I think, thou dost remember how thine ancestors sought to abolish the consular power, which had been the foundation of their liberties, on account of the overweening pride of the consuls, and how for that self-same pride they had already abolished the kingly title. And if, as happens but rarely, these prerogatives are conferred on virtuous men, it is only the virtue of those who exercise them that pleases. So it appears that honour cometh not to virtue from rank, but to rank from virtue. Look, too, at the nature of that power which you find so attractive and glorious. Do you never consider, ye creatures of earth, what ye are, and over whom ye exercise your fancied lordship? Suppose, now, that in the mouse tribe there should rise up one claiming rights and powers for himself above the rest, would ye not laugh consumedly? Yet if thou lookest to his body alone, what creature canst thou find more feeble than man, who oftentimes is killed by the bite of a fly, or by some insect creeping into the inner passage of his system? Yet what rights can one exercise over another, save only as regards the body, and that which is lower than the body, I mean fortune? What? Wilt thou bind with thy mandates the free spirit? Canst thou force from its due tranquillity the mind that is firmly composed by reason? A tyrant thought to drive a man of free birth to reveal his accomplices in a conspiracy. But the prisoner bit off his tongue and threw it in the furious tyrant's face. Thus the tortures which the tyrant thought the instrument of his cruelty, the sage made an opportunity for heroism. Moreover, what is there that one man can do to another which he himself may not have to undergo in his turn? We are told that Avarice, who used to kill his guests, was himself slain by his guest Hercules. Regulus had thrown into bonds many of the Carthaginians whom he had taken in war. Soon after, he himself submitted his hands to the chains of the vanquished. Then, thinkest thou that man hath any power who cannot prevent another's being able to do to him what he himself can do to others? Besides, if there were any element of natural and proper good in rank and power, they would never come to the utterly bad, since opposites are not wont to be associated. Nature brooks not the union of contraries. So, seeing there is no doubt that wicked wretches are oftentimes set in high places, it is also clear that things which suffer association with the worst of men cannot be good in their own nature. Indeed, this judgment may with some reason be passed concerning all the gifts of fortune, which fall so plentifully to all the most wicked. This ought also to be considered here, I think. No one doubts a man to be brave in whom he has observed a brave spirit residing. It is plain that one who is endowed with speed is swift-footed. So also music makes men musical, the healing art physicians, rhetoric public speakers. For each of these has naturally its own proper working. There is no confusion with the effects of contrary things. Nay, even of itself it rejects what is incompatible. And yet wealth cannot extinguish insatiable greed, nor has power ever made master of himself, whom vicious lusts kept bound in indissoluble fetters. Dignity conferred on the wicked not only fails to make them worthy, but contrarily reveals and displays their unworthiness. Why does it so happen? Because ye take pleasure in calling by false names things whose nature is quite incongruous thereto, by names which are easily proved false by the very effects of the things themselves. Even so it is, these riches, that power, this dignity, are none of them rightly called. Finally, we may draw the same conclusion concerning the whole sphere of fortune, within which there is plainly nothing to be truly desired, nothing of intrinsic excellence, for she neither always joins herself to the good, nor does she make good men of those to whom she is united. We know what mischief dire he wrought, Rome fired, the fathers slain, whose hand with brother's slaughter wet, a mother's blood did stain. No pitying tear his cheek bedewed, as on the corse he gazed. That mother's beauty, once so fair, a critic's voice appraised. Yet far and wide, from east to west, his sway the nations own, and scorching south and icy north obey his will alone. Did then high power a curb impose on Nero's frenzied will? Ah, woe when to the evil heart is joined the sword to kill. End of section 6 and song 6.
Recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Kirsten Ferreri, Los Angeles, California, August 2006. The Consolation of Philosophy by Anicius Manlius Severinus Boethius, translated by H.R. James. Book 2, The Vanity of Fortune. Section 7 and Song 7, Glory May Not Last. Then said I, Thou knowest thyself that ambition for worldly success hath but little swayed me, yet I have desired opportunity for action, lest virtue, in default of exercise, should languish away. Then she, This is that last infirmity which is able to allure minds which, though of noble quality, have not yet been moulded to any exquisite refinement by the perfecting of the virtues, I mean the love of glory, and fame for high services rendered to the common weal. And yet consider with me how poor and insubstantial a thing this glory is. The whole of the earth's globe, as thou hast learnt from the demonstration of astronomy, compared with the expanse of heaven, is found no bigger than a point, that is to say, if measured by the vastness of heaven's sphere, it is held to occupy absolutely no space at all. Now of this so insignificant portion of the universe, it is about a fourth part, as Ptolemy's proofs have taught us, which is inhabited by living creatures known to us. If from this fourth part you take away in thought all that is usurped by seas and marshes, or lies a vast waste of waterless desert, barely is an exceeding narrow area left for human habitation. You then, who are shut in and prisoned in this merest fraction of a point's space, do ye take thought for the blazoning of your fame, for the spreading abroad of your renown? Why, what amplitude or magnificence has glory when confined to such narrow and petty limits? Besides, the straitened bounds of this scant dwelling place are inhabited by the many nations differing widely in speech, in usages, in mode of life, To many of these, from the difficulty of travel, from diversities of speech, from want of commercial intercourse, the fame not only of individual men, but even of cities, is unable to reach. Why, in Cicero's day, as he himself somewhere points out, the fame of the Roman Republic had not yet crossed the Caucasus, and yet by that time her name had grown formidable to the Parthians and other nations of those parts. Seest thou then how narrow, how confined is the glory ye take pains to spread abroad and extend? Can the fame of a single Roman penetrate where the glory of the Roman name fails to pass? Moreover, the customs and institutions of different races agree not together, so that what is deemed praiseworthy in one country is thought punishable in another. Wherefore, if any one love the applause of fame, it shall not profit him to publish his name among many peoples. Then each must be content to have the range of his glory limited to his own people. The splendid immortality of fame must be confined within the bounds of a single race. Once more, how many of high renown in their own times have been lost in oblivion for want of a record? Indeed, of what avail are written records even, which, with their authors, are overtaken by the dimness of age after a somewhat longer time? But ye, when ye think on future fame, fancy it an immortality that ye are begetting for yourselves. Why, if thou scannest the infinite spaces of eternity, what room hast thou left for rejoicing in the durability of thy name? Verily, if a single moment's space be compared with 10,000 years, it has a certain relative duration, however little, since each period is definite. But this same number of years, ay, and a number many times as great, cannot even be compared with endless duration. For indeed finite periods may in a sort be compared one with another, but a finite and an infinite never. So it comes to pass that fame, though it extend to ever so wide a space of years, if it be compared to never-lessening eternity, seems not short-lived merely, but altogether nothing. But as for you, you know not how to act aright, unless it be to court the popular breeze, and win the empty applause of the multitude; nay, you abandon the superlative worth of conscience and virtue, and ask a recompense from the poor words of others. Let me tell thee how wittily one did mock the shallowness of this sort of arrogance. A certain man assailed one who had put on the name of philosopher as a cloak to pride and vainglory, not for the practice of real virtue, and added, "Now shall I know if thou art a philosopher, if thou bearest reproaches calmly and patiently?" The other for a while affected to be patient, and having endured to be abused, cried out derisively, "Now do you see that I am a philosopher?" The other with biting sarcasm retorted, "I should have, hadst thou held thy peace." Moreover, what concern have choice spirits, for it is of such men we speak, men who seek glory by virtue, what concern, I say, have these with fame after the dissolution of the body in death's last hour? For if men die wholly, which our reasonings forbid us to believe, there is no such thing as glory at all, since he to whom the glory is said to belong is altogether non-existent. But if the mind, conscious of its own rectitude, is released from its earthly prison, and seeks heaven in free flight, doth it not despise all earthly things when it rejoices in its deliverance from earthly bonds, and enters upon the joys of heaven? Song 7. Glory may not last. O let him who pants for glory's guerdon, deeming glory all in all, look and see how wide the heaven expandeth, earth's enclosing bounds how small. Shame it is if your proud swelling glory may not fill this narrow room. Why then strive so vainly, O you proud ones, to escape your mortal doom? Though your name, to distant regions bruited, over the earth be widely spread, though full a many lofty sounding title on your house its lustre shed, death at all this pomp and glory spurneth when his hour draweth nigh, shrouds alike the exalted and the humble, levels lowest and most high. Where now are the bones of stanch Fabricius, Brutus, Cato, where are they? Lingering fame, with a few graven letters, doth their empty name display. But to know the great dead is not given from a gilded name alone. Nay, ye almost lie forgotten, 'tis not you that fame makes known. Fondly do you deem life's little hour lengthened by fame's mortal breath. There waits but you, when this too is taken, at the last, a second death. End of Book 2. The Vanity of Fortune, Section 7, and Song 7, Glory May Not Last. Is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Kirsten Ferreri, Los Angeles, California, August 2006. The Consolation of Philosophy by Anicius, Manlius, Severinus, Boethius. Translated by H.R. James. Book 2, The Vanity of Fortune. Section 8 and Song 8, Love is Lord of All. But that thou mayest not think that I wage implacable warfare against fortune, I own there is a time when the deceitful goddess serves men well. I mean when she reveals herself, uncovers her face, and confesses her true character. Perhaps thou dost not yet grasp my meaning. Strange is the thing I am trying to express, and for this cause I scarce can find words to make clear my thought, for truly I believe that ill fortune is of more use to men than good fortune. For good fortune, when she wears the guise of happiness, and most seems to caress, is always lying. Ill fortune is always truthful, since, in changing, she shows her inconstancy. The one deceives, the other teaches. The one enchains the minds of those who enjoy her favour by the semblance of delusive good, the other delivers them by the knowledge of the frail nature of happiness. Accordingly, thou mayest see the one fickle, shifting as the breeze, and ever self-deceived, the other sober-minded, alert, and wary, by reason of the very discipline of adversity. Finally, good fortune, by her allurements, draws men far from the true good. Ill fortune oftentimes draws men back to true good with grappling irons. Again, should it be esteemed a trifling boon, thinkest thou that this cruel, this odious fortune hath discovered to thee the hearts of thy faithful friends, that other hid from thee alike the faces of the true friends and of the false, but in departing she hath taken away her friends, and left thee thine? What price wouldst thou not have given for this service in the fullness of thy prosperity, when thou seemest to thyself fortunate? Cease then to seek the wealth thou hast lost, since in true friends thou hast found the most precious of all riches. Song 8. Love is Lord of All. Why are nature's changes bound to a fixed and ordered round? What to leagued peace hath bent every warring element? Wherefore doth the rosy morn rise on Phoebus' car upborne? Why should Phoebe rule the night, led by Hesper's guiding light? What the power that doth restrain in his place the restless main, that within fixed bounds he keeps, nor over earth in deluge sweeps? Love it is that holds the chains, love o'er sea and earth that reigns, love, whom else but sovereign love, love, high lord in heaven above. Yet should he his care remit, all that now so close is knit, in sweet love and holy peace, would no more from conflict cease, but with strife's rude shock and jar, all the world's fair fabric mar. Tribes and nations love unites, by just treaties' sacred rites. Wedlock's bonds he sanctifies, by affection's softest ties. Love appointeth, as is due, faithful laws to comrades true. Love, all sovereign love, oh then ye are blessed, ye sons of men, if the love that rules the sky in your hearts is throned on high. End of Book 2, The Vanity of Fortune, Section 8 and Song 8. Love is Lord of All.
LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Consolation of Philosophy by Boethius. Translated by H.R. James. Book 3, True Happiness and False. Section 1 and Song 1. The Thorns of Error. She ceased, but I stood fixed by the sweetness of her song in wonderment and eager expectation. My ears still strained to listen. And then, after a little, I said, Thou sovereign solace of the stricken soul, what refreshment hast thou brought me, no less by the sweetness of thy singing than by the weightiness of thy discourse? Verily, I think not that I shall hereafter be unequal to the blows of fortune, wherefore I no longer dread the remedies which thou saidst were something too severe for my strength. Nay, rather, I am eager to hear of them and call for them with all vehemence. Then said she, I marked thee fastening upon my words silently and intently, and I expected, or, to speak more truly, I myself brought about in thee this state of mind. What now remains is of such a sort, that to the taste indeed it is biting, but when received within it turns to sweetness. But whereas thou dost profess thyself desirous of hearing, with what ardour wouldst thou not burn, didst thou but perceive whither it is my task to lead thee? Whither? said I. To true felicity, said she, which even now thy spirit sees in dreams, but cannot behold in very truth, while thine eyes are engrossed with semblances. Then, said I beseech thee, do thou show to me her true shape without a moment's loss. Gladly will I, for thy sake, said she, but first I will try to sketch in words, and describe a cause which is more familiar to thee, that when thou hast viewed this carefully, thou mayest turn thine eyes the other way, and recognize the beauty of true happiness. Who fain would sow the fallow field, and see the growing corn, must first remove the useless weeds, the bramble and the thorn. After ill savour, honey's taste is to the mouth more sweet. After the storm, the twinkling stars the eyes more cheerily greet. When night hath passed, the bright dawn comes in car of rosy hue, so drive the false bliss from thy mind, and thou shalt see the true. End of Book 3, True Happiness and False, Section 1 and Song 1, The Thorns of Error.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Gesine. The Consolation of Philosophy by Anicius, Manlius, Severinus, Boethius. Translated by H.R. James. Book 3, True Happiness and False. Section 2 and Song 2, The Bent of Nature. Section 2. For a little space she remained in a fixed gaze, withdrawn, as it were, into the august chamber of her mind. Then she thus began. All mortal creatures in those anxious aims which find employment in so varied pursuits, though they take many paths, yet strive to reach one goal, the goal of happiness. Now, the good is that which, when a man has got, he can lack nothing further. This is which is the supreme good of all, containing within itself all particular good, so that if anything is still wanting thereto, this cannot be the supreme good, since something would be left outside which might be desired. 'Tis clear, then, that happiness is a state perfected by the assembling together of all good things. To this state, as we have said, all men try to attain, but by different paths. For the desire of the true good is naturally implanted in the minds of men, only error leads them aside out of the way in pursuit of the false. Some, deeming it the highest good to want for nothing, spare no pains to attain affluence. Others, judging the good to be that to which respect is most worthily paid, strive to win the reverence of their fellow citizens by the attainment of official dignity. Some there are who fix the chief good in supreme power. These either wish themselves to enjoy sovereignty, or try to attach themselves to those who have it. Those again who think renown to be something of supreme excellence are in haste to spread abroad the glory of their name, either through the arts of war or of peace. A great many measure the attainment of good by joy and gladness of heart. These think it the height of happiness to give themselves over to pleasure. Others there are, again, who interchange the ends and means one with the other in their aims. For instance, some want riches for the sake of pleasure and power, some covet power either for the sake of money or in order to bring renown to their name. So it is on these ends, then, that the aim of human acts and wishes is centered, and on others like to these, for instance, noble birth and popularity, which seem to compass a certain renown, wife and children, which are sought for the sweetness of their possession, while as for friendship, the most sacred kind indeed, is counted in the category of virtue, not of fortune. But other kinds are entered upon for the sake of power, or of enjoyment. And as for bodily excellences, it is obvious that they are to be ranged with the above. For strength and stature surely manifest power, beauty and fleetness of foot bring celebrity, health brings pleasure. It is plain, then, that the only object sought for in all these ways is happiness. For that which each seeks in preference to all else, that is in his judgment the supreme good. And we have defined the supreme good to be happiness. Therefore, that state which each wishes in preference to all others is in his judgment happy. Thou hast, then, set before thine eyes something like a scheme of human happiness, wealth, rank, power, glory, pleasure. Now Epicurus, from a sole regard to these considerations, with some consistency concluded the highest good to be pleasure, because all the other objects seem to bring some delight to the soul. But to return to human pursuits and aims, man's mind seeks to recover its proper good, in spite of the mistiness of its recollection, but like a drunken man knows not by what path to return home. Think you they are wrong who strive to escape want? Nay, truly there is nothing which can so well complete happiness as a state abounding in all good things, needing nothing from outside, but wholly self-sufficing. Do they fall into error who deem that which is best to be also best deserving to receive the homage of reverence? Not at all. That cannot possibly be vile and contemptible, to attain which the endeavours of nearly all mankind are directed. Then is power not to be reckoned in the category of good? Why can that which is plainly more efficacious than anything else be esteemed a thing feeble and void of strength? Or is renown to be thought of no account? Nay, it cannot be ignored that the highest renown is constantly associated with the highest excellence. And what need is there to say that happiness is not haunted by care and gloom, nor exposed to trouble and vexation, since that is a condition we ask of the very least of things, from the possession and enjoyment of which we expect delight? So then, these are the blessings which men wish to win. They want riches, rank, sovereignty, glory, pleasure, because they believe that by these means they will secure independence, reverence, power, renown, and joy of heart. Therefore it is the good which men seek by such diverse courses. And herein is easily shown the might of nature's power, since, although opinions are so various and discordant, yet they agree in cherishing good as the end. Song 2. The Bent of Nature. How the might of nature sways all the world in ordered ways, how resistless laws control each less portion of the whole. Fain would I in sounding verse on my pliant strings rehearse. Lo, the lion captive ta'en meekly wears his gilded chain. Yet, though he by hand be fed, though a master's whip he dread, if but once the taste of gore whet his cruel lips once more, straight his slumbering fierceness wakes, with one roar he bounds, he breaks, and first wreaks his vengeful force on his trainer's mangled corse. And the woodland songster pent in forlorn imprisonment, though a mistress lavish care store of honeyed sweets prepare, yet if in his narrow cage, as he hops from bar to bar, he should spy the woods afar, cool with sheltering foliage, all these dainties he will spurn, to the woods his heart will turn, only for the woods he longs, pipes the woods in all his songs. To rude force the sapling bends, while the hand its pressure lends. If the hand its pressure slack, straight the supple wood springs back, Phoebus in the western main sinks, but swift his car again by a secret path is borne to the wonted gates of morn. Thus all are things seen to yearn in due time for due return, and no order fixed may stay, save which in the appointed way joins the end to the beginning, in a steady cycle spinning. End of Book 3, Section 2 and Song 2. Recorded by Gesine in March 2007.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please contact LibriVox.org. The Consolation of Philosophy by Boethius. Translated by H.R. James. Book 3, True Happiness and False. Section 3 and Song 3, The Insatiableness of Avarice. Ye too, creatures of the earth, have some glimmering of your origin, however faint, and though in a vision dim and clouded, yet in some wise, notwithstanding, ye discern the true end of happiness, and so the aim of nature leads you thither, to that true good, while error in many forms leads you astray therefrom. For reflect whether men are able to win happiness by those means through which they think to reach the proposed end. Truly, if either wealth, rank, or any of the rest, bring with them anything of such sort as seems to have nothing wanting to it that is good, we too acknowledge that some are made happy by the acquisition of these things. But if they are not able to fulfill their promises, and, moreover, lack many good things, is not the happiness men seek in them clearly discovered to be a false show? Therefore do I first ask thee thyself, who but lately wert living in affluence, amid all that abundance of wealth, was thy mind never troubled in consequence of some wrong done to thee? Nay, said I cannot ever remember a time when my mind was not so completely at peace, as not to feel the pang of some uneasiness. Was it not because either something was absent which thou wouldst not have absent, or present which thou wouldst have away? Yes, said I. Then thou didst want the presence of one, the absence of the other? Admitted. But a man lacks that of which he is in want. He does. And he who lacks something is not in all points self-sufficient? No, certainly not, said I. So wert thou, then, in the plenitude of thy wealth, supporting this insufficiency? I must have been. Wealth, then, cannot make its possessor independent and free from all want, yet this was what it seemed to promise. Moreover, I think this also well deserves to be considered, that there is nothing in the special nature of money to hinder its being taken away from those who possess it against their will. I admit it. Why, of course, when every day the stronger wrests it from the weaker without his consent. Else, whence come lawsuits? Except in seeking to recover moneys, which have been taken away against their owner's will by force or fraud. True, said I. Then every one will need some extraneous means of protection to keep his money safe. Who can venture to deny it? Yet he would not, unless he possessed the money which it is possible to lose. No, he certainly would not. Then we have worked round to an opposite conclusion. The wealth which was thought to make man independent rather puts him in need of further protection. How in the world, then, can want be driven away by riches? Cannot the rich feel hunger? Cannot they thirst? Are not the limbs of the wealthy sensitive to the winter's cold? But, thou wilt say, the rich have the wherewithal to sate their hunger, the means to get rid of thirst and cold. True enough, want can thus be soothed by riches, wholly removed it cannot be. For if this ever-gaping, ever-craving want is glutted by wealth, it needs must be that the want itself, which can be so glutted, still remains. I do not speak of how very little suffices for nature, and how for avarice nothing is enough. Wherefore, if wealth cannot get rid of want, and makes new wants of its own, how can ye believe that it bestows independence? Though the covetous grow wealthy, see his piles of gold rise high, though he gather store of treasure that can never satisfy, though with pearls his gorget blazes, rarest that the ocean yields, though 100 head of oxen travail in his ample fields, never shall carking care forsake him, while he draws his vital breath, and his riches go not with him, when his eyes are closed in death. End of Book 3. True Happiness and False. Section 3 and Song 3. The Insatiableness of Avarice. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Consolation of Philosophy by Boethius, translated by H.R. James. Book 3, True Happiness and False, Section 4 and Song 4, Disgrace of Honors Conferred by a Tyrant. Well, but official dignity clothes him to whom it comes with honor and reverence. Have, then, offices of state such power as to plant virtue in the minds of their possessors, and drive out vice? Nay, they are rather wont to signalize iniquity than to chase it away, and hence arises our indignation that honors so often fall to the most iniquitous of men. Accordingly, Catullus calls Nonius an ulcer spot, though sitting in the curule chair. Dost not see what infamy high position brings upon the bad? Surely their unworthiness will be less conspicuous, if their rank does not draw upon them the public notice. In thine own case, wouldst thou ever have been induced, by all these perils, to think of sharing office with Decoratus, since thou hast discerned in him the spirit of a rascally parasite and informer? No, we cannot deem men worthy of reverence on account of their office, whom we deem unworthy of the office itself. But didst thou see a man endued with wisdom, couldst thou suppose him not worthy of reverence, nor of that wisdom with which he was endued? No, certainly not. There is in virtue a dignity of her own, which she forthwith passes over to those to whom she is united, and since public honors cannot do this, it is clear that they do not possess the true beauty of dignity. And here this well deserves to be noticed, that if a man is the more scorned in proportion as he is despised by the greater number, high position not only fails to win reverence for the wicked, but even loads them the more with contempt by drawing more attention to them. But none without retribution, for the wicked pay back a return in kind to the dignities they put on by the pollution of their touch. Perhaps, too, another consideration may teach thee to confess that true reverence cannot come through these counterfeit dignities. It is this: if one who has been many times consul chances to visit barbaric lands, would this office win him the reverence of the barbarians? And yet, if reverence were the natural effect of dignities, they would not forego their proper function in any part of the world, even as fire never anywhere fails to give forth heat. But since this effect is not due to their own efficacy, but is attached to them by the mistaken opinion of mankind, they disappear straightway when they are set before those who do not esteem them dignities. Thus the case stands with foreign peoples. But does their repute last forever, even in the land of their origin? Why, the prefecture, which was once a great power, is now an empty name, a burden merely on the senator's fortune. The commissioner of the public corn supply was once a personage. Now what is more contemptible than this office? For as we said just now, that which hath no true comeliness of its own now receives, now loses lustre, at the caprice of those who have to do with it. So then, if dignities cannot win men reverence, if they are actually sullied by the contamination of the wicked, if they lose their splendor through time's changes, if they come to contempt merely for lack of public estimation, what precious beauty have they in themselves, much less to give to others? Though royal purple soothes his pride, and snowy pearls his neck adorn, Nero in all his riot lives, the mark of universal scorn. Yet he on reverend heads confers the inglorious honours of the state. Shall we, then, deem them truly best, whom such preferment hath made great? End of Book 3, True Happiness and False, Section 4 and Song 4, The Disgrace of Honours conferred by a Tyrant.